All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of In Between Days. We are a little bit behind due to real life commitments getting in the way, so we are going to be covering Friday, July 2nd, all the way to Friday, July 9th in this video. Also, when Days of Our Lives takes a little bit of a hiatus during the Olympics, we're going to do something fun. We're going to look at some old school Days of Our Lives during those weeks. So stick around and stick with us. It's the In Between Days channel, and we're going to get into things right now. Alright, so we're not necessarily going to go into as much detail as normal. We're just going to go through what's been happening on Days, and we're going to talk about some of the reactions that I've heard from other people and online while discussing some of this latest material, some of the latest developments on the show. So stick around for that. We're going to get right into it right now. On Friday, July the 2nd, Sierra basically handed Ben some devastating news. She showed up and she wanted those divorce papers signed. It's a little bit of a ridiculous storyline, but they've got to kind of work with what they've got, in the sense that Victoria was away and now she's back. The way they wrote her out for a little while was that she lost all her memory. She hasn't had those memories return. She may be able to see them on social media. She may have various family members trying to tell her, listen, this is the life that you do not remember. These are the 3 or so years missing from your life, and that matters, and you shouldn't be making these rash decisions to marry your best friend and while you're still married. So we're going to get more deeper into all of that, but we're going to kind of go through the days one by one. We may be a little bit back and forth and a little bit not as organized as normal, but we're still going to get through it. We're still going to have a great discussion on what happened in the last 5 or 6 episodes of Days of Our Lives. Then we're going to be all caught up and ready for Monday and the rest of the week of what's coming up. Usually we talk about Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then we do a mid-week show that talks about Thursday, Friday, and the preview video for the next week. But we're just going to have a nice big buffet of everything today. So we're still talking about Friday, July 2nd. That's when Paulina's secret was revealed to everybody. So all this time, she was brought in as this character that was supposed to represent diversity and bring a little bit more, perhaps, diversity to the show. And she had this big plan to revitalize the Horton Town Square into a more diverse space that represented more different kinds of businesses. Basically, like, you know, all sorts of different backgrounds and cultures coming together in the center of Salem. It sounded like a beautiful and great idea, but all along, Paulina's secret plan was to just to bring in this massive price town, demolish the entire Horton Town Square, which is a little bit campy and ridiculous of an idea in itself, that she could just keep that from everyone and pull it off on a holiday and in one day have the entire square annihilated. It doesn't seem very likely, but that was indeed her plan, as we all know now, was to bring in this Price Town place. And Price Town is essentially it sounds like a glorified Walmart. Not even a glorified Walmart. It sounds pretty much like, I thought Paulina was a classy lady, but she just wants to roll out these cheap Walmarts into town, or at best it would have been like, what, a Costco? So not really conducive to how I saw that Paulina character. Her actual idea, or rather her fake idea that she was presenting on the surface, actually sounded more in line with the character that I thought she was. You know, I thought she was a sort of a self-made woman with some financial ability to her, who saw a opportunity. And we all knew there was something shady about it, but to just make it this idea that she just wanted to knock the whole town square down to build a Walmart is a little bit far-fetched and a little bit silly, but that seems, without taking any nasty shots, that seems to be the type of writing we get from this regime. A little bit more campy, a little bit more what the heck is this from time to time. I am enjoying the show lately, but there's a lot of doubles and doppelgangers and long lost children, and that seems to be too predominant almost, and so we get some silly stuff. We get some really silly stuff on Days of Our Lives these days. Eli also questions Gwen about her possible involvement with Dr. Snyder on Friday, and how that comes about is Tripp gives Eli a bit of a tip-off that at one point there seemed to be a tense discussion, maybe borderline argument between the two, so Eli is following up on that. And the reason that Eli is at all suspicious of Gwen is because Tripp offered that information to him about his cousin. Yes, his cousin Gwen. Everybody's related in some way, and you may not think about it at face value, but yes, Gwen is actually a cousin to Tripp. And if you can't figure out exactly how, it has to do with the fact that Steve and Jack are brothers, and Gwen is the long-lost daughter of Jack, so that makes them cousins. We're going to move on before we get too much into who's cousins with who, because that could be a whole podcast, probably a two-part podcast about how everybody is eventually a cousin of someone almost in Salem. But on Monday, July the 5th, I'm having trouble saying July today. I have a little bit of a cold so bear with me, a little bit of a summer cold. But at least we're back, and at least we're getting back into things, and we're going to get back into a proper schedule and keep things moving along. Just a little bit of extra real-life commitments, so a little bit behind, but we're going to get a little bit ahead by the end of this. So on Monday, July 5th, Pricetown, more with Pricetown. Ben first tries to convince Sierra, he's trying to, while she's there with him, make her remember the life that they have with one another, or rather that they did have, that she can't remember, and he does not want her to make this huge mistake. But ultimately, he's not going to keep her against her will, just because she came to see him and asked him to tear up the divorce papers. He's not gonna just keep her against her will and try to forcefully make her remember. As we know, he almost tried the injection route while she was in the hospital, and that kind of freaked her out more because that was rather forceful. But now his approach seems to be like, you're making this huge mistake, but I can't necessarily do anything about it, and I'm not going to keep you here in this room against your will to try to convince you, but you are in fact making a huge mistake. And meanwhile, we begin to find out between Monday and Tuesday that we find more out about the fact that Theo and Sierra are engaged, which really doesn't make any sense. They're childhood friends. They've all but forgotten about Theo's autism, and they've made him into this kind of manipulative character who is seeing that his friend can't remember a big chunk of her life, and he's just trying to step in and claim Sierra, which is obviously not right. And I'm not sure why more people aren't having a sit down with him and saying, Theo, this isn't going to end well for you. And the only person that I've really seen try to do that with Theo is, ironically, Ben. And Theo's not having any of it. He wants to be with Sierra. I really wish, and I know a lot of people out there on the forums and in general really wish that Days of Our Lives would not treat Theo's autism much like they treat Ben's leg that was blown off in the war. Ben's leg Philip, I'm talking about. Philip's leg was blown off in the war and seems to, storyline-wise, just have miraculously grown back. And so what I'm comparing that to is the fact that Theo does have this autism, and he finally did mention his own autism on the Friday, July 9th episode, but they don't show it or portray it, and I'm not saying that they have to make it over the top. Obviously, Theo is very high functioning, but when we had like, I guess I'll just say toddler Theo, even though he was a little bit older than that, but there was a wonderful actor that played him as a kid who portrayed his autism very well, and the actor before this Theo also portrayed elements of Theo's autism, and I would like to see more of that, and I think it's important, and I don't really think that we should brush it over. And the other side of that argument that I've seen some people make is that many people with high functioning autism are in very important jobs and are very successful, and all of that's very true as well, and I think that's the case with Theo. However, I do think that there's small mannerisms and certain things that he would retain that should be shown and reflected, because otherwise it's a disservice to that population to just kind of erase his history with those challenges. That's all I'm saying, is I want them to portray that he does have those challenges, because he is in fact autistic. Even if he's super high functioning autistic, let's weave that into the fabric of his storyline and the rest of the show, and let's stay true to that, because I think otherwise you are forgetting an important part of what has always been Theo's character, and I think that can't be said enough. It's an absolute disservice to just paint over and leave that in the background of the storylines to do with Theo. It really has to be, because when Sierra does let him down, if that sort of doesn't come out on some level, it would definitely be a shame. So I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna wait to pass judgment, because they may have something in mind for all of this, but right now, other than him mentioning the fact that he has autism on the Friday, July 9th episode, we have not really seen any evidence or care towards the fact that Theo does in fact have autism. High functioning autism, but autism nonetheless, and I think it's important to portray that he is in fact on that spectrum, and if he has progressed to we wouldn't barely notice his autism, then let's explain that, and let's go with him on that journey, and let's at least be given some information to understand why he's at the point that he is now and how he got there. And I just think that's like really important, that we can't just paint over that part of Theo. I mean, it's a disservice to that community, but it's also a disservice to the actors that have portrayed Theo before this Theo, because they did such a good job portraying that autism. Much like the main character in Atypical. I don't know if any of you are watching the series Atypical, where the main character is also an autistic young man, and that is portrayed so well. It's into season 4, its final season, and I really recommend anyone go and seek out that show, because it's an amazing show, and you'll see almost the differences. And that's really the thing I'm saying here, is let's portray it with as much accuracy and compassion and care as we possibly can, rather than painting it over because it doesn't necessarily suit the storyline, especially when the storyline is not very good. Because what you have is two childhood friends, Theo and Sierra. Sierra can't remember anything. Theo has always had a thing for Sierra and maybe can't quite reconcile those feelings, and then you've got this strange situation where Sierra's married, but these two are acting like children, thinking that they're engaged and gonna get married anyways. So we'll get into a little bit more of that as well, because the Sierra that we're getting right now is not too kind and not too rational. But let's move on to Tuesday, July 6th. That's when Ben actually does warn Theo. He's like, you know, this is not gonna end well for you. She's going to remember, and what you're doing is not on the up and up. you're saying you're a friend to Sierra, but are you really? Because you're manipulating her based on the fact that there's a 2 to 3 year gap in her life that she cannot remember, and you are capitalizing on that. Whether Sierra is going along with it or not, we all know the only reason Sierra's going along with it is because she's missing pieces of her own life. Meanwhile, Paulina Price puts on this sob story for Abe, so she's basically trying to explain why she did what she did. Why did she tell everybody one thing, including her own daughter, who was very excited about having a bakery in the square? Sweet Bits, selling those controversial Alice Horton donuts. That was going to be, controversial but cool. I thought it would be kind of sweet to have a bakery in the square, something a small town would have. Certainly better than a Walmart. But Paulina basically, how do we wrap this up in a nutshell? Because Paulina tells Abe about some of her past life challenges, and that includes being with a man before she was with whoever Chanel's father was, and she was with a very, indecent, manipulative man who gave her beautiful things, but it always came with a price. So he gave her nice things, but he tried to control her and all of that. So she eventually left that situation and promised to herself that she would become self-sustaining and make money of her own, and anytime that she saw an opportunity to make more money, she would make herself more of that money. Fair enough. That is a touching sob story. It's a touching backstory for Paulina, but I don't think it excuses anything that she did with just telling everybody one story, and in actuality she was screwing everybody over in the whole town, lying and manipulating to Abe just so that she could put this eyesore of a Price town into Salem. The whole storyline is a little bit far-fetched, and I think it's a little bit of a shame because now they've got Paulina as this kind of a bad character. She's not a good character anymore. And when I say good character, I just meant, as I said before, originally she came into town with all these progressive ideas and wanted to make, or allegedly she wanted to make the square into a more diverse retail space where it represented different kinds of small businesses and different cultures and different ethnicities that live in the town. That was a nice idea, but now it's really, no, I'm just this evil person that capitalized on a situation. I saw a way to make money and I wanted to bulldoze the entire legacy of the town and basically the show and replace it with a Walmart. So of course that's going to upset the people of Salem, and of course that's going to upset the viewers. But the people of Salem, why include her own daughter and Lonnie and Eli, who is a direct Eli, those are his grandparents, Tom and Alice, and they just took that plaque off the centerpiece in the square like it meant nothing. And of course we're all supposed to be triggered by that. But yeah, that was a serious thing. But how would she have thought that everybody would just come around to her point of view? She said it's easier to ask for forgiveness sometimes than for permission. But how in her mind did she think that she was going to be forgiven for destroying the entire square, even after the fact that it's not that she didn't know what it meant to everybody and the legacy that it represents to the town with the Horton plaque right in the middle of this square. So I'm not really sure why the character of Paulina would imagine that everybody would just eventually come around and say, oh, thank you so much, you now provided us with this eyesore megastore where we can get great prices on a 12-pack of giant ketchup, but Tom and Alice's legacy and their plaque under the beautiful tree in the center of the square and all of that is just gone as if it never meant anything. So we also get a little bit between Chanel and Allie. I think the new Chanel came in on Tuesday. I could be wrong. On Monday, All I know is one day this week it was the old Chanel Precious Way, and then we switched to Raven Bowens. They were wearing the exact same dress, I noticed, with the exact same stuff in the hair done up the same way, same dress, and it was just all of a sudden a different actor. Now I thought that was kind of done well, because instead of announcing that it's some new actor, it was sort of dead obvious. You know, she's dressed the same, and the cutoff point was it sort of made sense as well, because we had Precious Way for the storyline up until she found out that her mother was lying and that the bakery was not going to become a thing. And then all of a sudden a new Chanel steps in. I know how weird that sounds, but the new Chanel on her first day had a lot to do. Her first scene, she's crying, upset, and really kind of out of sorts. So that was her very first scene. She's got to be totally upset about the fact that she just found out about her mother's real plans and how she was betrayed by her own mother. So we'll see how all that goes. But she goes to Nicole's house to see Allie and get some comfort, and the two of them are comforting each other on the couch. You'll have to forgive me because I don't remember if their actual kiss happens on the Tuesday, but nonetheless they do end up kissing, and I really think that might have I'm not sure what day that happened on, but the important thing is, obviously there's things developing between Allie and Trip, but at the same time there's things developing between Allie and Chanel, so it will be very interesting to see what direction they take that all, because it's a very kind of modern thing in some ways. A lot of shows are doing this now, the kind of gender fluid female relationship, and I know a lot of people on the forums are triggered by a gender fluid kiss. I can't say a lesbian kiss because that would be inaccurate. We don't really know what Allie identifies on as, but we know that Chanel describes herself as gender fluid. So a lot of people are referring to it as a lesbian kiss and upset that it's a lesbian kiss on their show. But I mean, we've had Will and Sunny on the show, and we've had Will, Sunny, and Paul on the show, and at one point there were 4 gay men on the show, 4 gay characters on the show at the same time. So, I mean, Allie's own brother is gay, so I'm not sure what people are overreacting to is what I'm saying, but it will be interesting to see, because there's different ways to go. Chanel and Allie could just kind of remain friends in the end, and they could push Allie with Trip, which is probably the way to go, just because I'm a big fan of the chemistry between Allie and Trip and how they got to where they got. But this is an interesting kind of a curveball to throw into things, and we'll have to see how it all develops. Some people are saying, would they dare to have a throuple or some other kind of situation where they're all sort of involved? I don't know, and I don't necessarily know that's the best way to go, but we'll have to wait and find out, and certainly all of that is open to possibility. Probably nothing Degrassi hasn't done over the years, so we'll have to wait and find out. We're gonna go ahead and move on to, this might be a little bit of a long one, but we're playing catch up, don't forget. So we're gonna talk about Wednesday, July 7th, and again, this is a little bit backwards and forwards, a little bit fluid, but we're still trying to stick to what happened on what day the best we can. Brady is super done with Kristen. We know that from Wednesday, July 7th. We get some stuff about that. He is really, at this point, set in his mind that he can no longer be with Kristen because of the things that she's done. Kristen, meanwhile, calls EJ, and she calls EJ to ask him if she got her letters. So why didn't you just call EJ and tell him everything that was in the letter in the first place? Send him a text message, send him an email. It is a little bit silly, but in that magic letter, we'll get to that letter a little bit later, because Kristen calls EJ. She asks him if she got the letter. Sammy hangs up the phone, takes it from EJ and hangs it up before EJ can answer Kristen. Why didn't she just call back 2 minutes later? I don't know. Too convenient, too logical. But then Gabby ends up finding the letter in question on the desk in the foyer on a pile of mail. She takes it, and then we know that on Thursday, July 8th, Jake and Gabby read the letter, and Jake ponders giving EJ the letter and dropping that bomb. He even goes over to the Zamira mansion, and he is going to give EJ the letter and reveal everything to him, but ultimately he decides not to. We've also got Nicole still trying to uncover the truth when it comes to Sammy and Lucas, seeing as Sammy is trying to uncover her truth about sleeping with Xander while Eric is out of town. Brady also gets rejected by Chloe. He kind of tells Chloe he's done with Kristen and wants to be with her. Brady's always got to be with somebody, but Chloe has promised a chance to Philip, and so we're going back to that triangle from 20 some odd years ago, and honestly, not really feeling any of that. Brady and Chloe, maybe, and Brady and Philip and Chloe, definitely not feeling that one. It's cool having Philip around, but why do we need him around? But of all the people that he's interacted with, I would have maybe thought a Philip and Gabby thing could work, but Gabby's obviously very, for the time being, into Jake, so we'll have to see how that all plays out, because a lot of people are gonna be coming in and out and affecting relationships very soon. Not gonna talk too much about the Rafe and Ava stuff, since we don't have much of that to talk about this week, but there was a little bit about it if we go back even further, but you can catch that in the archives, and we discussed a lot about that. I have a feeling that Rafe is going to end up with Nicole once Eric comes in and out of town, and that gets shattered to pieces. I think Rafe is going to be the one to come to Nicole's emotional rescue, and those feelings are going to have to be explored between them. Right now, Rafe is with Ava, but I think she might end up being the odd one out, and my prediction, I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but my prediction for Ava is that if and when she loses Rafe to Nicole in any way, shape, or form, she's going to revert back to, like, kind of being the more evil and psychotic Ava Vitale, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. So now we are finally almost caught up. We talked about Friday, July 2nd. We talked about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now let's just talk quickly about Friday, July 9th. Like I said before, Theo does mention his autism, and I guess that's a start. I guess that's maybe a breadcrumb for those people who really want to see that discussed and portrayed properly in a better way, more accurately, or at least tell us how he got from point A to point B a little bit more, and don't just like paint over it. We want to have that included in the character of Theo. A lot of actors put work into that character, and they portrayed that autism really well, so let's continue to do a service to that community by portraying it kind of in an accurate way. That's what I would like to see happen. Anyways, on Friday, July 9th, Sammy goes to the fireplace and she tries to destroy the letter that has come from Kristen. How did she get her hands on it? Gabby and Jake hand it over to her. Gabby's looking out for Sammy because Sammy looked out for her in the past when Gabby was having all those problems with Nick Fallon. We won't get too into that, but that does explain a type of loyalty there, a type of understanding, and why. And Sammy is really been protective of Gabby, who is the mother of her grandchild, for a very long time, if you think about it. And in fact, Kate helped at one point Gabby, believe it or not, and Sammy, believe it or not, get rid of Nick Fallon, believe it or not, by dumping him in a river. And of course, now we've got Dr. Snyder showing up in the river, much the same as Nick Fallon once did, but I digress. So Sammy tries to destroy that letter on Friday, but that gets diverted when EJ comes into the house and is asking her, why are you trying to start a fire in July? So they head upstairs and they have relations. Sammy sneaks back downstairs with the letter. She's trying to burn it, and she gets that started when her son calls. Her son, Johnny Demira, calls, and he distracts her, so she walks away from the fireplace. Not something you want to be doing before the letter is burned to a crisp. And as we know, somebody finds that letter at the end of Friday, and if you don't want to know who that somebody is, then pause or end the video here for about a couple minutes. I'm going to spend the next minute, starting right now when I count to 3. I'm going to tell you who it is, because they show it in the preview video and in some spoiler photos. So it is not EJ, it is not Nicole, it is not any of those people. It's not Tony, it's not Anna, it is Chad. Chad Demira finds the letter, so obviously he is going to be aware of some of that information. A letter written by Kristen that reveals that indeed Sammy slept with Lucas. What will Chad think about that letter, and what will he do with that letter? I really have no idea. But that's where we're going to leave things off, and we're going to find out some more, obviously, on Monday. What happens with that letter, and what happens with everything else going on in Salem? What happens with Paulina and her plans to demolish the square? What happens with Ben and Sierra and Theo? What happens with all the other characters in Salem? We will find out next time. Thank you for listening to In Between Days. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It's good to be back. We've got another week or two of Days of Our Lives to discuss, so we'll be dropping episodes once or twice a week, covering everything happening in Salem. And when we go, or rather when Days of Our Lives goes on their Olympic break, we're going to be talking about some old school Days of Our Lives during the break. So stick around, and also you'll probably catch on this channel my Wait, That's Weird podcast. That talks about all the weird news happening in the world. It's a lot of fun to listen to, so that will be making a comeback as well. If you want to hear some weird, funny news, or you just want your Days of Our Lives updates, or maybe a little bit of both, please subscribe to this channel. It helps out a lot, and I look forward to speaking to you all again really soon. Keep watching Days, and congratulations once again, Days of Our Lives, on the 2-year renewal. See you next time.